Charlotte and the KKK. I remember when grandmother prevented a lynching and saved a young man's life. This young man was working for her and living at our house. He also did odd jobs for a white farmer who lived near our farm. One day this young man was reprimanded by this white man, and an argument ensued whereupon this young man was struck by the farmer for talking back to him. The quote-unquote boy struck back and knocked the farmer down. In Arkansas, as well as throughout the South, if a black man sassed a white man, it could mean death. This young man not only sassed a white man, but knocked the hell out of him. That meant sure death. The young fella, he was about 19, came home about 2:30 that evening and told Grandma what had happened. Grandma said to him, "Willie, they'll kill you for that. You know that, don't you?" Willie didn't answer. He was in deep thought, and maybe he didn't hear what she said. She said, "Willie, you have to leave and run for your life." He answered, "I'm not going to run. I'm not afraid of them." Grandmother replied, frowning, "I know you are not afraid of them, but you are a fool. And if they get their hands on you, you will be one dead nigger for sure, and maybe some of us along with you. Now, you get out of here right now." But Willie wouldn't leave. He seemed to be in a stupor or something. He just wouldn't leave. Grandmother knew the Klan would come for him as soon as they could round up enough members for a good-sized mob. Sure enough, just as the sun was going down, someone saw a cloud of dust down the dirt road leading to our house. Grandmother pleaded, "Willie, they are coming for you. This is your last chance to save your life from torture and a horrible death, maybe even being burned at the stake." He then decided to leave. By this time, the mob was in sight. Grandmother had 5 of her children who were home: Wiley, Robert, Fanny, Niecy, and me. Even me. And herself to line up on the front porch to shield Willie from the mob so he could sneak out of the house and into the forest. Our house sat in a clearing at the edge of the forest, and luckily, Willie escaped from them by the skin of his teeth. They never found him, but the mob of about 50 mounted and armed men, led by Mr. Yoakum, rode up to our front gate and dismounted. In a few minutes, they surrounded our house and blew their whistles, I suppose as a signal that everyone was in place. Then Mr. Yoakum stepped forward and said to Grandmother, who knew some of the members of the mob, including Mr. Yoakum, Mr. Young, and several others, "Charlotte, we are not going to harm you or your family. All we want is Willie. You send him out and we will be on our way." "Willie is not here, Mr. Yoakum," Grandma said. "Don't lie to me, Charlotte. I know he's in there, and if you don't send him out, we're coming in and going to get him." "I'm not lying to you, Mr. Yoakum. You can come in and see for yourself. Willie came here about 2:30 this evening, but he left." They went into the house and looked in all the closets and under the beds, and even looked in the chimney to the fireplace and in the attic and under the house. Houses in Arkansas were built on blocks, about 18 inches off the ground. Dogs and chickens and cats found shelter under these homes from the hot sun and from the rain. While the searching of our house was going on, some of the other Klansmen were searching the barn and several storage sheds. After they were convinced Willie was not there, they blew their whistles and marched to their horses, mounted, and rode away in the dark. I've thought about this many times throughout the years. It was difficult for me to understand the thinking of this Mr. Yoakum, a kindly man who so willingly helped my young grandparents when they got married, and later in years authorized my grandmother to shoot railroad construction workers who were trespassing on her property, with the assurance he would stand behind her all the way, and he would have kept his word had she killed someone. Yet, this same man did allow his mob to terrorize a widow's home in search of a victim to lynch, and would have thought nothing of torturing and killing a black man for striking a white man in self-defense. Grandma spent many years on the farm, but the day came when she decided it was time to turn the farm over to her son Wiley and move to the city. We moved to Camden for a short while. Camden was a seedy town back then, but eventually we moved up to Hot Springs, Arkansas, where she stayed for several years. Her final days were spent in Kansas City, Kansas, living with their daughter, and there she died at the age of 86 years old. One more thing I remember was Mr. Barnes, the slave master, had a granddaughter who grandmother kept in touch with her until death. I never found out the lady's name, nor the city and state where she lived, because at the time I was very opposed to grandmother corresponding with the white woman. I had asked grandmother, "Do you like that woman?" She said, "Yes, I like her very much." "How can you?" I replied. "After the way her grandfather enslaved you and your family, and the cruel things he did to your mother?" Grandma had answered, "She's not responsible for the things her grandfather did. She's a nice person, and I like her." Well, that's how grandmother was. She loved everybody. Before grandmother died, I also learned Mr. James Howard, the white man and slave owner, who throughout the years had visited grandmother, the man who would come and bring her things from the store and her mail from the post office. Well, he in fact was my great-grandpa, and grandmother was his son's widow, Henderson Howard. Her children took her body back to Arkansas and buried her by the side of her husband, who had preceded her in death by more than 50 years. Charlotte Howard, Henderson Howard, Mary Robinson, Alex Barnes, and others from our family are buried in Sweet Canaan Cemetery in Lisbon, Arkansas.